big time with the storms growing. I mean, Frankenstorm, superstorms, tornado outbreaks, earthquakes. It's just picking up like no can do. And it's funny. I guess it's funny in a way. A couple of guests who I've had on this show, since the beginning, they've been regular guests. Dr. Rand and John Moore, and while through the years we questioned much of what they told us, and one thing that they both did agree on and inform us of is how, at this point in time, I mean, they said from 2010 on that the storms would increase, the earthquake activity, the volcanic activity would all be picking up, that there would be noticeable changes on this planet, and I don't think anybody can argue that they were right about this. So if they're right about that, what else might they be right about? And, what might Gordon be right about? Because he's been talking about this kind of thing for a long time as well, and he's going to talk more about it with us here tonight. So, Gordon, welcome back to Late Night in the Midlands, my friend. Frankenstorm.
Yeah,
what about
pleasure to be here. And I'm still. Last night, I'm on a mountaintop in the middle of the Maine coast, so I'm safe from the water. But I did get hammered between 80 and 100-mile-an-hour gusts all night long. Right now, I have fog so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face, drizzle, and for a moment there, we had some sunlight and clouds, and you could see plainly they were rotating around the eye. I guess in west of Pittsburgh or someplace like that.
Mm-hmm.
So It's been exciting.
So what do you think we're looking at here? Are we looking at, I hate to call them natural, but I'll use the word for lack of a better word to come up with, but are we looking at natural earth changes? Are we going through a climate type change naturally, or is there something assisting this?
Well, Planet X is between the Earth and the Sun, and that's causing all of this, but this particular storm was very interesting because I watch the Weather Channel a lot, and I follow the weather because in the winter I plow snow, so I've always been interested in the weather, and I've worked on commercial fishing boats, and you just get used to paying attention to the weather. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago I heard some scientists discussing how come I never had a tropical storm merge with a huge cold front coming from the west, and so then all of a sudden here we have that. So, but clearly the jet stream was the major factor here, and the jet stream is in a wobble, so you've got the Great Atlantic Rift is a bar of metal going down the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and Planet X is 30 million miles from the Earth with its North Pole pointed at our equator. So as the Earth turns and the Atlantic Rift faces Planet X, which is in line with the Sun, and I sent you some pictures showing it at the 5 o'clock position below the Sun, and those are pictures I took recently. I mean, I just go out in the yard with a green number 12 welding filter or two R25 photographic filters that cost me like $3 each at the camera store. And I just shoot pictures of the Sun, and there's this glowing object below the Sun at the 5 o'clock position. So that's how close this thing is. So as the Earth turns and the Atlantic faces the Sun, it's facing Planet X. And Planet X pulls the Atlantic down towards it because it's below the Sun, it's below the ecliptic, just barely. And so it pulls the North Pole down, which the North Pole of the Earth and the North Pole of Planet X normally repel each other. So as soon as the Atlantic turns past facing the Sun, and the Sun sets on the west side of the Atlantic, like where I am in Maine, and it becomes dark, as soon as that happens, then the North Pole stops being pulled down and instead gets pushed away. So you get these giant loops in the Gulf Stream, and it happens the same pattern every day because every day, once a day, the Atlantic faces the Sun. So as that happens, it repeats. And so it forms a stable loop, which varies very little. So that's what happened is this storm got caught in one of these loops in the jet stream caused by Planet X. And the way the loop happens is the air stays in the same place, but all of a sudden the Earth underneath the air rolls. So it's not really that Planet X is affecting the air, it's that it's making the Earth wobble under the air. So the jet stream normally would flow pretty straight from west to east. So it will come off the Pacific and go straight across North America and off into the Atlantic, and that's that. And because of the wobble of the Earth, it's made the jet stream into these huge loops that repeat. And that's why, like, I'll tell you, Maine is famous for, like, 5 or 6 days out of 7 are gorgeous. And, okay, you can get rain and snow the other 2, but this year we've had 6 days out of 7 rain and fog. Whereas just to the west of us, we've had drought. And then the same thing is true on the other side of the Atlantic. Western Europe has been soaked in rain, drowned in floods, fog, rain, and wind. And then just to the east of that, in Russia, they've had drought. And then all the way around the world, in China, they've had floods. So this is a pattern that, you know, if it was just a random wobble, then who knows what you'd get. But the fact that it repeats every single day makes a pattern that makes a U-shaped loop in the jet stream, and that's what this storm got caught into. So it is, you know, a Frankenstorm, a superstorm, a storm. I mean, where you are, I'm on the northern edge of it right now. I think you're still on the southern edge of it, aren't you, in South Carolina?
Yeah, we've only, at least in my area, I'm in Columbia, South Carolina, we've only gotten winds up to 25, 30 mile an hour winds, so we escaped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not the, you don't think it's HAARP then moving the jet stream as some have suggested?
Oh, no. See, excuse me. No, for all the things that people want HAARP to do, they would have to cover the whole state of Alaska in nuclear reactors. I mean, it's just not possible. They can affect some weather and do different things, but there's no good reason to do this unless, and this seems the most unlikely of all, you're trying to tell everybody, move away from the coast and don't come back, which would make sense if you're a good person. But I doubt that the elite and the powerful have any desire to save anybody. So the idea that they would say, well, this is a warning, you should move away from the coast, this to me is more like a message from God. Gee, maybe the coast isn't a good place for you to be living.
Yeah, quite possible. You know, and I've seen a speculation that's been out there about this, and some say, oh, you know, they steered it this way because they want to alter the elections or what have you. And I think that's going a little out of the way to alter an election, that they can do much easier ways to do it, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that, you know, they can dig up dirt on candidates. And with the way you can play with Photoshop and audio clips now, I mean, you could make up anything and who could disprove it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So how frequent do you think these storms are going to become? And you're probably expecting much bigger than what we've even seen now in the future.
Well, the thing is I'm expecting, forget the storms, the earthquakes, the volcanoes, and the destruction. But back last, it was almost a year ago, that metal boxes were discovered on the shore of Oregon coast. And this woman in San Diego, Alma Guthrie, who's telepathically in touch with the ETs, said those boxes were put there by ETs to create vibrations to smooth out the quakes until the public was informed. So that was really interesting, and I brought that up with Nancy Leader of Zeta Talk because she had said over and over there are no extraterrestrial devices on Earth. And as soon as I said that, the Zetas broke through in our conversation and used her voice to speak to me directly and said that what that woman, Alma Guthrie, said was true, and that's there are tens of thousands of these devices to ease up on the quakes until the public is informed. So the thing that I've gotten a lot of hell for recently, which isn't my fault at all, which is that I said Obama was going to announce pole shift before the elections. And, of course, most people say, well, you know, I'll eat my hat if the president announces that. But I've got several reasons for saying that. First of all, the Zetas said that there's a 93% chance that he's going to do that. And that doesn't mean he is going to do it, but it means there's a very good chance that he's going to do it. But for me, personally, he can't not announce it. Because if I'm going out the door every day, every clear day, which isn't very often, but every clear day with a simple little digital camera and a green number 12 welding filter or two R25 camera filters, lens filters, red lens filters, and taking pictures of Planet X at the 5 o'clock position beneath the sun, if I'm doing that, and I'm not doing anything that a single one of your listeners couldn't do. And the thing is hundreds, if not thousands of people around the world are doing the same thing. So it's reached a point where if anyone can go take a picture of it, and the prophecy is that when it gets close enough to appear the same size as the full moon, and it separates from the sun so that everyone looks up and sees it clearly in the sky and goes, oh my God, what's that? At that point, you're about 49 days from pole shift. So if it's only 30 million miles from Earth now, and it's almost stopped, there's no danger that it's going to collide with the Earth. But as it gets closer and closer, it's going to be more and more obvious. So if you've been lying for 60 years, you, the government, known this was going to happen, and you did not say one word, and then all of a sudden the public looks up and sees this, I mean, isn't the normal reaction going to be, how in the hell could something that big come into our solar system and you wouldn't know about it? So therefore, that means that you've been lying to us all this time, which means, personally, I'm not going to believe another word you say. So if the government's to retain any credibility at all, because this is an inevitable thing, this isn't something you can debate, like theoretically Planet X is going to come into the solar system and theoretically someday somebody's going to be able to take a picture of it. It's been here since it came around behind the sun in 2003. NASA was taking pictures of it. So now regular people on Earth are taking pictures of it. So to say it isn't here, that argument's absolutely worthless. And then to say that it isn't going to do something is just not logical. I mean, the logic of it is things have never been stranger. You know, in our lifetimes, they've never been stranger in 3,657 years. So that's how often it comes back. So you could say that that's natural because there isn't anything you can do about it. You know, it comes back and it either causes a greater or lesser pole shift. The last pole shift, the pole moved from Greenland to the Arctic. And this one, it's going to move from the Arctic to Recife, Brazil, which is 92 degrees, which is pretty big. This is not a magnetic shift. This is an actual geographic pole shift because the core of the Earth, nothing changes that. And the North Pole of the Earth always points up because the North Pole of all the other planets in the solar system always points up. So what's going to happen is granite floats on magma. So this planet's going to come close enough to grab the crust magnetically by grabbing the Great Atlantic Rift. And it's going to stop the crust from turning with the core. So you're going to get what's called the prophecy of the 3 days of darkness. So when you get the 3 days of darkness, the crust is not going to be turning at all. And the water is going to start sloshing because people don't realize that as the Earth turns, all the water accumulates around the equator. So if you take a sailboat from the Arctic to the equator, you're thinking, well, that's the water level. It looks even to me, you know, but really, because the Earth spins 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, it's accumulating at the equator. So if Planet X grabs the crust, because the crust has a huge iron bar on it called the Great Atlantic Rift, if it grabs the crust and the crust stops turning, first of all, the noise of separating from the crust is going to be unbelievable. And the earthquakes are going to be in the 9 and the 10 range, and they're probably even going to be in a range that there isn't actually any good measurement. It's just going to be so big. And then the Earth is going to be still, and all the water is going to go from the equators back to the poles. So you're sitting there in the UK, or you're sitting there in Greenland or in Maine, and all of a sudden what looked like a normal high tide is going to be nothing because the water is going to come back 50, 100 feet higher than that because the water from the equator is going to try and head back for the poles. Then, as Planet X comes from below the sun, below the ecliptic, and goes up past the Earth, it's going to grab the Atlantic Rift for a while and then let go of it. When it lets go of it, that's when the eastern tip of Brazil will be over the North Pole. And then all the water is going to go, first I said it's going to go from the equator to the old poles. Then it's going to go from the old poles to the new equator, and the new equator is going to go from Alaska through Hawaii to Antarctica. So that's what's going to cause the 600-foot tidal wave. So getting a 4-foot or a 5-foot or a 6-foot, an 11-foot, a 14-foot tidal surge in New York is nothing. Imagine when you get a 600-foot tidal surge. I mean,
wow.
You're going to need to be 100, 200.
Brings me back to the Art Bell movie.
Yeah. So, and it won't necessarily be a breaking wave. I mean, there were some waves on top of the surge yesterday, but it was basically the surge just coming in from, and it was from the low pressure of the storm, and the wind, they call the wind the fetch. The longer the fetch, the bigger the waves, the bigger the surge. So here you had a giant circle, 1,500 miles in diameter, the outer edge of it's coming at New York from the northeast and filling up Long Island Sound and pounding water up against the shore, and it has no place to go because New York is basically a corner in the coast. So,
I think I was going to say, Gordon, I think that, a lot of people are waiting for the obvious. They're waiting for it to be obvious in the sky. You could put a million pictures out of this, and, people will still say it's reflections, it's, this and that and the other thing.
No, I know, flares.
Yeah, and I got to be honest, it is hard for somebody who don't believe in this. It's hard for them to accept that, and I think that's what they're waiting for. We're waiting to see it in the sky.
Well, that's why I tell people, take your digital camera, go take a picture of the sun, and tell me that's normal, because it isn't. There's a huge bright area because Planet X has a tail of dust, and rocks and moons 5 million miles long. So when you look at the sun, you can't see a disk anymore. What you see is this giant oily cloud of dust around the sun. So the sun seems brighter. I mean, how many people say, well, the sun seems different, light seems different? The way you measure the color of light it's called color temperature. The color temperature of light has changed, and that's because the sunlight is filtering through this giant cloud of red oxide dust. And I have a friend in Colorado. He said the sun rose about to the right of where it normally should have risen, because he drives his kids to school every day, and when he turns out of his development to go onto the highway, the sun is always to the left of his car. And this morning it was straight on, and it could not possibly have normally, astronomically, decided to rise at that position. The thing is, the Earth is wobbling, so it isn't the sun is moving, it isn't that the moon is moving, it's that the Earth is moving, and it looks like it's, because you're on the Earth, so you think, well, the Earth isn't moving. You think, well, it's the sun that moved or the moon that moved, but really it's the Earth that moved. So we are in a giant Earth wobble, and look at that earthquake that was off Vancouver Island. Now, the true magnitude of that, the U.S. Geological Society for about 2 years now has been discounting quakes by 1.3 on the Richter scale. So if they say it's a 7.7, it's really a 9. And they're doing that intentionally. That's to fool people.
They changed that a while ago.
Yeah. So I was saying to people, well, the next one to go, there's going to be a quake in California, and sure enough, yesterday there was a quake in downtown L.A., and they said that was a 3.5, so that means it was more like a 4.8, but it was in downtown L.A. So I figure the next most logical one is San Salvador, Costa Rica, and immediately a couple of volcanoes just came alive in Costa Rica today. They've been silent for 6 years. So the net effect of what's going on in the Pacific is the Pacific's going to narrow, the Atlantic's going to widen, and you've got to have quakes doing that. Now, the question is, shouldn't these quakes have already started occurring? Well, yes, they should have. So why haven't they? Well, what if the extraterrestrials put little vibrating boxes all over the Earth on the faults to release the pressure gradually in order to be an incentive for somebody like Obama to address this question in public announcement? So that was what I said, because the Zetas said it, and when they said it, I knew it made sense, because the thing is, if you just wait until there's disaster, everybody looks up at the sky and goes, oh my God, we've got to get our gun and riot, because this is the end times. So how much better would it be for the government, and they'll say, well, and the government didn't tell us about this, they're lying, you can't trust anybody. But if the government announces it, then they can, once it gets really desperate, then they can say, well, it's a national emergency. And then nobody is going to blame the president. They're not going to say, they're going to say, well, it wasn't his fault. He can say, well, it was national security. I didn't find out about it till recently, and I wasn't allowed to say anything, and now I am. So I'm telling you that this is a reality. I wish I didn't have to say it, and see, then you can say, well, it's not the president's fault. It is a national emergency. We should all work together. And then if there's a big outbreak of looting and rioting, people will say, well, that's wrong, because we should all share and work together to survive, because this is bigger than all of us. But if he says nothing, and then all of a sudden it becomes obvious and people go nuts, and then he declares martial law, then all these military patriot types are going to say, see, we told you, we knew it was coming, martial law, now it's civil war, get your gun. And so the result is going to be far worse. Now, a lot of people say, and I have to agree, that I don't think martial law would last more than a week, because, I don't think anybody's going to put up with that. And
I don't either.
Especially the Patriot movement, which I'm not a part of, but I get lots of emails from them, and I know what they're saying and what they're interested in, and they're all wondering, well, the military are being moved around, we've got foreign troops in the country, we're building these strange railroad cars that could shackle like people. They ordered 102,000 of them. What are they going to do with those? They've got FEMA camps. They've ordered all these coffins. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that the government's getting ready. And then you've got Social Security is going to arm themselves with hollow point bullets. I mean, come on. I thought these people were supposed to be handing out your own money. It's your money. You earned it. They're going to be armed with hollow point bullets. I mean, they're going to arm the NOAA people, the fishery people, with hollow point bullets. I mean, so there are lots of signs, and they're pieces in a giant puzzle. And when you put it together, it's like, oh yeah, something big is about to happen. And I'm trying to go on your show to tell everyone what it is.
And I appreciate that. And I want to comment on a few of the things that you had mentioned. Now, I haven't noticed the sun out of place myself because, well, I sleep mornings, so, but I have noticed the moon out of place not long ago. I haven't really kept track as of late, but, I mean, one night I'd come out and it'd be in one spot. The next night I'd come out and it'd be totally, you know, way across the sky in another spot. And I'm thinking, how can that happen like that? You know, it's, yeah, so I've noticed some strange things, and I'll tell you a couple, I don't know, these could be cover stories that have been put out, but one story goes that there's supposed to be a supernova in a galaxy near us, and they say, well, if you see this bright object in the sky, don't panic, that's what it would be. You'd be seeing the light from this supernova, and I'm thinking, are they trying to prepare us for possibly seeing this thing in the sky? And another is this comet that's supposed to come by. It's supposed to be the brightest ever. And I just wonder if they're not preparing people for seeing this type of stuff in the sky. Well,
what they're doing is everybody, the Pentagon, the White House, Congress, all the leaders around the world have all been reading Zeta Talk. So they know that Zeta Talk and what Zeta Talk has said, which is that it's going to come around behind the sun, from behind the sun in 2003, and then it's going to stop moving. They just keep coming up with them. There's going to be an asteroid showers, or there's space junk, and that accounts for the rocks, which are actually rocks from the tail of Planet X. There's going to be comets, and God knows it isn't here yet. You know, it's a comet. It's going to be way out. It's going to be obvious. Oh no, it's going to be a supernova. You know, you'll notice it. You know, anything but go to Zeta Talk and learn that it's an inhabited, a human-inhabited, selfish planet, 29,000 miles in diameter. That's atmospheric, volcanic, and oceanic, and it's already here. And
it comes every. Gordon. Let's take our break here. We're up with James Gianotto, and he's telling us that Planet X is real. It is out there. It is causing a lot of the problems that we're undergoing here on the planet as far as earthquakes and storm pickup and volcanic activity. And, you know, I'll say it again. I've said it a million times. I remember reading a story back in '83. It was handed out by my science teacher in high school, John Marshall High School in Rochester, New York, and they handed it out. And I remember reading it, and it talked about Planet X. NASA said that they had discovered Planet X, but they made it seem like it was a planet that had life. And I don't remember the story. I was a kid, but I don't remember it word for word, but I do remember being excited about it. And then I never heard about it again up until, I don't know, probably the mid-'90s. I started hearing about it through sources like Art Bell and such. But I don't know. Myself, I believe that Planet X is out there. I just, I'm like a lot of people. I've always wanted to see it with my own eye. I mean, I'd really rather not see it, but I mean, I'd like to see it. And I've seen some pretty convincing photos and videos. The problem is it's hard to determine who's trying to just get hits to their website and who is legitimate. And I believe Gordon. He's a guy who's been looking into this for some time. He doesn't put up I don't believe he has his own website, and he's not selling anything. So what's there not to believe in the information he gives? And he does. I think Autumn's getting the pictures up on LateNightInTheMidlands.com as we speak, pictures that Gordon had sent to me. I remember once going out there with a camera and taking pictures, and I thought that I had it. I said, hey, that's Planet X, and it turned out to be my shutter. But I haven't took the method that he's talking about, and we'll learn more about that, how we can all go out there and get pictures. So, I'm not telling everybody run for the hills. I'm telling you, here's the information. You could choose to believe it or not believe it. That's up to you. But I do suggest that everybody at least research this, because there is a ton of evidence pointing towards exactly what he's talking about being true. So before you just go dismiss it, I would suggest a little research. Absolutely. And Gordon, we're back, my friend. And so, yeah, I'd like to know more about Zeta Talk for those who might be thinking, what are they talking about? Maybe you can explain a little bit what that is and
lines that intersect. And people were looking at that going, there's no way we're going to translate that. And then somebody did. And so there were all these translations, and it was the biggest thing for German, English, and French archaeologists from the year 1800 to like the American Civil War. They would travel to Iraq, find these tablets, and translate them. So Zechariah Sitchin was reading all these tablets, and he spoke a lot of different ancient languages. He spoke all the European languages, and he could understand the different debates and discussions in these books that were, 100 years old. And he's reading and he's going, this is not the correct interpretation, because when they interpreted it in those years, they had no idea of the space program. They knew very little with astronomy. And now, in light of the space program, because he wrote this book in 1974, that's when it got published. He was writing it for at least 5 to 10 years before that. What they're talking about is a planet that comes through the solar system every 3,657 years. It's inhabited by selfish humans who are tall. They have red hair. The statues at Easter Island are them. They have very dour-looking faces, so they're not handsome. And they were coming here to mine gold. That was their project. And the reason why is because, and you could see that if a planet, an inhabited planet, comes through the solar system every 3,657 years, what in the hell does it do for the rest of the time? How do they stay warm? Well, one reason is that it's a big, big planet, 29,000 miles in diameter, and it's volcanic. So it has these gigantic volcanic rifts that are open on the surface, sort of like the pictures of the volcanoes in Hawaii. There's this huge orangey red glow, and it's an oceanic planet, and it's a cloudy planet. So it's very rare for them to actually see the stars. So these volcanic rifts create this glow that lights the clouds up and make it look reddish. So that's one of the reasons why people say this is the destroyer comet, this is the red comet, this is the great comet. It's not a comet at all. It's an inhabited planet. And they come through the solar system, and they came through mining gold. So they came here, and they would land and mine gold, and then one day, after several 100,000 years, and this is all in the Sumerian tablets, after several 100,000 years, they said, geez, what in the hell are we doing? We've got genetics. Let's take some of these apes and breed a bunch of slaves. Let's make them smart enough to be good slaves, but dumb enough not to know that we're not gods. So that's what they did, and there were thousands of Adams and Eves. And Google Earth has revealed so many secrets of the past through these satellite pictures that anyone can look at. They discovered a city near the gold mines, near the gold fields in South Africa, that's 100 miles by 200 miles. It must have had at least 2 million people. They've gone there, they found the stone ruins of these buildings and the whole city. It's gigantic. And nothing impressive. I mean, these are slaves. They weren't building like palaces for these people. These are just like little huts that collapsed. But they dated some of this stuff, and it's 250,000 years ago. And then you look at modern genetic science. And modern genetic science says that all of mankind came from one woman in Africa, possibly 400,000 years ago. So that's what these tablets say. And so Zecharia Sitchin put them into modern language with modern understandings. The Anunnaki, who are the people who live on planet X, and their name for their own planet is Nibiru. So the Anunnaki from Nibiru, they describe the Earth as the 7th planet. Now, why would they do that? Because if you go, we always call ourselves the 3rd planet, meaning we are the 3rd planet from the sun. You've got the sun, you've got Mercury is the 1st planet, then Venus, and then Earth. So we're the 3rd planet. But if you're coming from space, it makes sense that you would describe it going the other way around. So it's little things like that, these tablets, these seals, where they would make something out of hard clay, and then they would roll it in wax or roll it in soft clay, and they would copy the seal, this emblem, and it shows the Earth as the 7th planet. So there was that, and then, which you can tell I'm urging you, if you haven't picked up a copy and started reading the 12th planet, maybe it's time to do it. But anyway.
Right. Well, let me ask you something before you continue. Now, the planet Nibiru, I want to touch on that really quick. How is it possible to, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible because, we've learned a lot, but how is it possible to withstand, I guess, the stable magnetic field and all the things that they would need, I guess they would need because we need it. How do they sustain that with a planet traveling through space? I mean, could that be possible?
Yes. It's got deep, deep oceans, and water has the highest specific heat of any substance on Earth. So it takes more heat to heat water, and water holds more heat than any other substance. So if you have a certain amount of warm water, and you have a certain amount of warm anything else, doesn't matter what it is, gold, stone, granite, clay, whatever, wood, it takes more heat to heat the same amount of water. And once it's heated, it holds heat more than anything else. So that's one thing in their advantage. The second is that they have a much bigger molten core than the Earth does. So it's a lot warmer on the surface anyway because all this magma is constantly welling up. And so, but still it gets cold. So they figured out in their great wisdom the only way they could expand and grow and be happy and not suffer these climate changes was to get gold and powder it and put it in the atmosphere and use it like a space blanket. And they tried it, and it worked like crazy. So you have the Mayans. Now, everybody talks about 2012 and the Mayan prophecy. The Mayans were some of the slaves. The Mayans didn't have computers. They didn't have telescopes, and yet they knew the positions of the planets better than NASA until the 1970s. And they had incredible calendars, incredible. Where did these people in the jungles of Central America get the idea for that? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, they were controlled slaves through fear, and they sacrificed people, and they said, you're going to learn this or else we're going to kill you. And it was only Jesus. When Jesus came, he was the first person to say you don't have to kill something to worship God, because the Anunnaki were pretending to be God. They had the spaceships, the lasers, the atom bombs, they had the rockets, they had guns, they had all this technology, they had writing, they had manufacture of clothing, they had everything that everyone would want. And so they said to everybody, look, we're God. You do what we say or else we'll kill you. So the Mayans were told, this is the calendar. You better memorize it because we are coming back. And when we come back, you damn well better have a lot of gold ready for us, or else we're going to start killing everybody again. So that's the Mayan story right there. The Mayans were like totally subjugated with fear. And they had to sacrifice, kill things, virgins, captured slaves, captured armies, their best friends. Didn't matter. You had to kill in order to worship God. And what kind of a God is that? That isn't a God. It's a selfish extraterrestrial that's trying to scare the hell out of the slaves so they'll go mine some more gold. So that's what was going on the Earth. And that's what this 2012 is right in the period when Planet X is floating in space between the Earth and the Sun, and they could be, except that they're banned, but they could be landing spaceships from Nibiru, from Planet X, on Earth and saying, where's our gold? So they're not, because unselfish extraterrestrials said, that's it, you've overextended your stay. You're not welcome. You're like a house guest after 3 days. Get out of there. You're ruining everything. And so they were banned. So they can't come back. They'd love to come back, but they can't.
Well, wouldn't they get surprised if they were to come back now? Because especially if they landed in the United States of America, they'd have a real problem going door to door telling people, hey, get out here and dig up my gold for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, nobody would stand for it. And they may be 7 to 12 feet long, tall, but they die like anyone else, and bullets will kill them. And they're not welcome, and they're not even trying, because every time they try, something goes wrong with their rockets, or it goes wrong with their technology, and they pretty soon they got the idea, oh, we're not allowed to go to Earth anymore. So,
do you think it's possible that the government knows about this? And maybe, I don't know, I go out on a limb, but maybe that's why gold prices have gone so high.
Yeah, and not only that, but the government actually worries about what you said. Well, what if they come back and land? What are we going to do? And, Nancy at Zeta Talk has told them several times, you don't have to worry. They're not allowed here, so they're not coming back, so forget it. And you're not going there either. If you try and go to Planet X and land like a manned mission on Planet X, before you even get part of the way there, something's going to go seriously wrong with your electronics and your whole mission's going to fail, so don't try it. So everybody has the idea. And but Nancy Leader is a very nice woman who lives in Wisconsin. I've gotten to know her quite well, and she's very sincere. She's very honest, and she volunteered at childbirth to be a telepath for the Zetas. Now, the Zetas are unselfish humans. They're known as the little grays, and you've got to understand that it's the same up there in space as it is down here on Earth. So it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You're talking about cats and dogs on Earth, people on Earth, extraterrestrials, reptilian extraterrestrials, worm extraterrestrials, octopus extraterrestrials. There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. So everybody has a group and that's because of the spiritual growth process. You reach a point where you want to orient all your behavior around either unselfishness, which is the best way to go, or selfishness, which about 10% of every population, including extraterrestrials, chooses. So you've got selfish and unselfish everywhere. But the unselfish, thank God, are in the majority, and they're also the most advanced technologically. And they came here and they said, this Earth is a great future place. This is a great incubation for a great blessing to the whole universe, and we're going to protect it against these selfish extraterrestrials. So they're banned from coming here. So yes, there are selfish agents, and that's who the government interacted with. When Eisenhower was president and MJ-12 was first formed, and there was the crash at Roswell, and a secret inner group of the government made contact with extraterrestrials, the government was always selfish, and that's no surprise when I tell you that. And like attracts like. So at that time, selfish ETs were allowed to contact people on Earth. Not the Anunnaki. They're banned forever. They can never, ever come back. Even the selfish ETs don't want the Anunnaki to come back because they're basically a bunch of low-life, crude jerks. And they're only.
I think they left some of their kind behind.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, you know, if you come to Earth, if you're an Anunnaki and you come to Earth and you do enough bad karma things, then you have to be born on Earth as an Earth person. So you create these slaves, but then you get involved with them and you do bad things, then your karma is to be reborn on Earth and live through what you did. So, you know, for most souls, that's the only way they can learn something is to experience it themselves.
Doesn't it seem like we're going that same route, though? I mean, because you look at what governments, even around the world, are doing, and they're starting to create things and clone things and mix this breed with that breed, and pretty much playing the role of God.
It's always a minority, and we're this close, as they say, this close to empire. I mean, if it weren't for pole shift with Planet X, I swear to God, within a few years, they would have cameras everywhere, Big Brother everywhere. You'd all be chipped. You'd be numbered. You wouldn't be able to do anything without permission, and you'd be expendable. To be honest with you, you know, most people would be expendable. So we're very close to that, but we're never going to reach it because there's going to be a worldwide disaster that's going to be the big equalizer, and it's going to set everybody, including the selfish, the powerful, the wealthy, the bankers, the military-industrial complex, the politicians, all of them are going to be right back to equal to where you're at, which is if you don't grow a garden, you aren't going to survive. So it's going to get really basic, and none of the wealth and the power and the position and the arms are going to matter. So there is a lot of really great things to look forward to. One thing to look forward to is the total collapse of all governments, because if you have unselfish people working together for their own survival, you don't really need a government. Governments are so a few people can get control over everyone else and accumulate wealth and go to war with each other and create empires. And it's reached a point where everyone can see that. Nobody's going to put it up with it anymore. You can't just come in and say, well, I'm in charge. People are going to laugh at you like, who needs you? You know, so.
Yeah, I wish they do that, though, because,
yeah,
you
they
know,
don't
right
do it
now,
yet.
Yeah, we've got police who are tasing children in playgrounds. I mean, it's gotten that bad. It's just crazy.
Yeah, well, see, we've got all this technology, and the selfish are always looking out for people with no hearts, no empathy, and that's the kind of person that you need to get control of the whole planet. Is you need people that will do things like that, tase children, shoot young mothers. I mean, it really, they don't have a line. They don't, you know, and it isn't. As a soul, they do have empathy, but they block it. So the government is always looking for people that would, you know, and a couple of years ago, all these police chiefs across the country resigned, and that's because they had all these secret meetings, and they said, look, there's going to be riots in the streets, and you're going to have to shoot your own neighbors. And people with hearts said, well, I won't do it, and they resigned. So they got people in there who will do it. So,
what else I think, too, is, you know, they've got our troops spread out thin here and there and everywhere around the world, and I'm thinking, so then what they would probably do is bring foreign troops in to keep order, as they say, and, of course, the foreign troops would have no problem shooting us because they don't live here. You know, it's a whole other ballgame. I understand the United States has made some kind of pact with Canada now that if anything gets blown out of proportion, that their troops would come here or our troops would go there to help them or vice versa.
Oh, yeah, and that's what they seek to do. And do you see, after the government's collapse, there's still going to be a carry-on government in Denver, and it's going to control most of Colorado in the corridor from Colorado Springs, where the Air Force Academy is, going south all the way to Boulder. And they're accumulating supplies and men, and what they're doing is they're choosing, as these troops come back, they're choosing troops that don't have families, aren't married, don't have kids, don't seem to have any emotional affect. You know, they don't relate to people. Those are the people that they're selecting to these elite little teams that they hope will ensure martial law for the military leaders after pole shift. And they don't realize, you know, the beauty of selfish people is they can't even trust each other. They turn on each other, and You know, so you're the little dictator, and you've got a private army, and then everybody's sitting there thinking, well, why do we need him? And they shoot the leader, and then they take over, and then they argue between themselves and shoot each other, and pretty soon there's nobody left. So,
yeah. You know, I just seen a
whereas
movie, something like that. There was I believe, a nuclear war, and these people were down in some basement shelter, and that's exactly what happened. It come down to a woman pretty much screwed everybody over. She was the last one standing, and when she come out in her little space suit, there was nothing left. So
yeah.
enjoy it. You're all alone now.
Yeah. So you know, and so anyway, around 1995. The Zetas started speaking through Nancy Leader in Wisconsin, and she started this website called ZetaTalk.com. And there's 6 mirror sites or 7 mirror sites. It's published in every language in the world through volunteers, translate everything. And it is questions asked by the public. So in other words, Nancy's not like loading the deck. She takes questions from the public since 1995. And then she asks the Zetas, and they telepathically give her the answer, and she writes it down and puts it on the website. So what you've got is 39,000 pages of questions from the public with answers from unselfish Zetas. So I can say, go read it, and then most of you aren't, you know, and a lot of people have heard, well, Nancy lies and she makes stuff up, but there's people who say there's no such thing as extraterrestrials, the government would have told us, there's no such thing as telepathy, there's no such thing as, you know, and if there are aliens, they're all lying bastards and you can't trust any of them, they're just trying to take over the earth, and, you know, it's just like ridiculous. So, but the point is, it is the single most amazing body of information since Edgar Cayce. Now, probably you're aware that Edgar Cayce did 14,000 life readings for people while in a trance. And every question he was asked and every answer he gave was written down, and it's all in a library in Virginia Beach, Virginia, called the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which is known as the ARE. And you can read these life readings. Well, Nancy's 39,000 pages surpass it by many, many times. And so then they started this separate website, poleshift.ning.com. Now, ning.com is a private business, and it allows you to start a membership club if you wish. And so some of Nancy's followers, and it's not a cult, and she doesn't have rules, and you're not required to pay anything, you don't have to be give money, and she does all of this out of her own pocket. She doesn't charge a single thing for you to go to Zeta Talk and read it. It's all free. And the same with poleshift.ning.com. But these people in Europe started this website called poleshift.ning.com. And that is where you ask the questions that Nancy asked the Zetas. So after all these years, since 1995, 17 years, a lot of questions have been asked. And Nancy will review the questions, and she will not answer any question that's been asked before. And if you keep asking questions that have been asked before, she'll get really upset with you and not even listen to anything you say, because she feels that this is such an important issue that you should be able to do your own research. And there's a Google search engine on Zeta Talk, and any question you might have, you can do a Google search. I mean, it's so compelling that if you just start reading at page 1, paragraph 1, sentence 1, I don't know how you could ever put the book down, because it's just totally fascinating. It describes the history of Earth, the future, the meaning of things that are going on now, what can be done about it. And the Zetas are trying to warn people about pole shift and what they can do, because the government has known for 60 years and not told anyone.
That's right. So, Gordon, we've got a short break. Okay, yeah, well, we're going to get right back to that, right, with a question or comment. And make sure you get over to www.latenightinthe.midlands.com, become a member, and be informed. By all means, inform others. Very important. And make sure you check out the other shows that come on this network. Starts at 10 a.m. Here on the LNM Radio Network with Tough Reality. And there's shows that go on through the day right down to the last, which is me, Late Night in the Midlands. And, yeah, you know, how many times have we heard, especially when I was on the other network, you know, oh, no, they're all fallen angels. And I don't see why fallen angels would need spaceships. It just never made sense to me. But, hey, you know, to each their own. I'm not criticizing. Could be right, just like the guy who called in and said dinosaurs were intelligent. Hey, I don't believe so, but it's possible. All right, Gordon, we're back. And yeah, you know, I hear so many times, oh, they're fallen angels. And it's usually from the religious groups. who classify them as fallen angels, and
well,
I don't think
the
so.
religious groups. You know, you've got somebody 2,000 years ago writing descriptions based on what they know then, and you know there just wasn't a place for selfish extraterrestrials to fit into that picture because the technology and the science wasn't around to do it. But now we know, you know. So look, if somebody wants to say that somebody's a fallen angel, you know, I don't disagree because if somebody's selfish, what do you care whether they're extraterrestrial, selfish angels, or what? They're still dangerous. Keep away from them. And you march around the city 7 times a day for 7 days, and on the 7th day, the walls will come down. But you have to give us all the gold and silver that's in the city of Jericho, or else it won't work. So Jericho goes, fine, Joshua goes, fine, no problem. So he gets the instrument, and he does what he's told, and the walls come down. So what does he do? He goes in and he slays every man, woman, and child in Jericho. Not one single soul in this huge city, not one single soul survived. They were all put to death by the Jews. And what did they do? They stripped the whole city of gold and silver and gave it to the eternal host.